And we're live.
Good evening. Welcome to our Municipal Council for Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask if there's any declarations of interest at this time. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just an advisement to members of council. Item L2 relates to the assumption of Sharonvit subdivision that had some work adjacent to my property. I've previously declared on that file, but the works have been complete adjacent to my property for some time, and the homes have been occupied and so on. And so I have therefore concluded that I no longer have a pecuniary interest, but I just wanted to advise council that I have considered it and that there is not one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other at this time? The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nation and other Indigenous peoples, and we'd like to thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. I have a couple of announcements. Yesterday was World Down Syndrome Day. This past Friday, a flag was raised on our community flagpole to commemorate the day and bring awareness to Down syndrome. Earlier today, council attended the official opening of the new loft space at the East Gwillimbury Sports Complex. I would like to extend our thanks and appreciation to our staff and to our partners for making this space possible. It's beautiful. It will be used by our new 55 and up seniors club, who I know are very excited, and also our youth in the community as well. Are there any other announcements from members of council? I'm not seeing any. Madam Clerk, I would expect that Councillor Crothers would.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I appeared to hear at the beginning that there was an interest to move an item up for council's consideration. Would that be following the deputation that we have on the prepared agenda, or prior to that?
It would be following the deputation.
Certainly. So with that, per the procedure bylaw, council will require to pass a motion to move that particular item up, and it will be placed following the deputation item E1.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers?
Thank you. I'm happy to move that. It's item Q3, the presentation from Megan Potter, and Q4, the related report from the Environmental Advisory Committee, moving it up after the deputation.
Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Persicini, do I have a seconder? Councillor Crone? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Crothers. We will now deal with our deputation. And I believe they're with us on the call tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I am here. I'll just get right into it, I guess. My name is Adam Layton. I am a principal with Evans Planning. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I am here with to speak to item K1, which is the staff recommendation report with respect to the second phase of the Sharon Corners development, located at the northwest quadrant of Mount Albert Road and Leslie Street. Council may recall the first phase of development was approved last year, and the construction of the retirement home has been underway for some time and is expected to be concluded in 2023. I do have a presentation. I trust that, or I hope that Clerks was able to circulate the updated presentation to the members of council, which included one further rendering of the proposed urban townhouses. The renderer just fell a little bit behind. We were not able to meet the deadline, but if it was not received, I would be happy to circulate that to members of council. But in any event, we are here tonight to review application SPA 2106, which is a site plan control application for phase 2 to permit a number of townhouse and urban townhouse dwellings, extending the existing laneway network that was established through phase 1. If I could have the next slide. This shows the overall comprehensive plan for Sharon Corners in the context of the surrounding area. You'll note phase 2 is outlined in the red color, and phase 1, again, which has been approved, is in the blue, and there would still be 2 future phases. The laneway that leads to phase 1, which was already established and has been constructed, and by and large, this phase would continue that laneway and provide the full connection between Leslie Street and Mount Albert Road. Could I have the next slide, please? This is a more schematic drawing showing some of the key points of phase 2, including both the location of the proposed urban townhouses, which is a new type of dwelling unit that was developed specifically for this site, and which we are very excited for, as well as the location of the more traditional townhouse dwellings, which are front-loaded, have a driveway in the front, with tandem parking with a garage and your traditional rear yard. Similarly, there is the 3-meter multi-use pathway that is to be constructed along the Mount Albert Road frontage. There is a trail connection to the existing regional trail, which ultimately goes to the north, to the south, and leads towards the park in the Sharon Village development. And I should also note, I forgot to outline it on this plan, that there would also be a new sidewalk extended up the Leslie Street frontage to the driveway access to Leslie Street. So there is plenty of pedestrian connectivity into and around the development. If moving on to the next slide. This is a conceptual rendering of the proposed traditional townhouse dwellings. As you can see, it's contemporary in nature and includes both brick and stone facade materials, and your traditional driveway with 1-car parking in front and 1 car in the garage. The next slide shows the conceptual rendering of the urban townhouses. Again, this is a new form of stacked townhouse, and I do have floor plans on the next slide, but we are very excited about this option. It does read very much like your typical rear-loaded townhouse. Parking would be accessed from the rear. There would be a 2-car garage, 1 for each unit in the module. I would note that a series of an architectural control guideline addendum was prepared specifically to address this unit type and provide recommendations for how this type could be incorporated into the community, the larger community, and particularly given the presence of the retirement home next door, we felt this was an interesting and welcome addition to the community in terms of it being an alternative unit type that would work for both new first-time home buyers, people looking to downsize but stay in the community, and as well those with mobility issues. And the reason I say that, maybe we should go to the next slide, is because of the features within the building. So this just shows one module of the urban townhouse dwelling, color-coded based on the unit. It's a 3-story unit, as with the traditional townhouses. The ground floor is split longitudinally, so down the length of the building, of the unit. Each unit would have a garage and a front door with direct access into the unit, and then they would share a common elevator, and this would run up all 3 floors of the building. So the second floor in blue would be all 1 unit with the right side unit on the ground floor, and the third floor in orange would be all 1 unit with the left side of the ground floor being the location of its entry. So with the provision of the elevator, that actually provides very good accessibility to stacked townhouses, which otherwise may not have the best or may not be fully accessible in some cases. And we felt that this was a way to provide both an alternative form of housing in a compatible built form, while at the same time and potentially feed into the retirement residence that is under construction. Aside from that, we have been working cooperatively with staff and are always happy to work with staff to work out the details of this proposal. We've reviewed the recommendations. We have no concerns therein. There's still a few minor issues to be resolved, but in general, we feel that the proposal would be a welcome addition to the community, and we're very happy to see it come to fruition. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have. And perhaps it might be best to leave slide 2 up on the screen, because that is the nice master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Layton. Are there questions of our presenter tonight? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have to say, I'm intrigued with the urban townhouse model and the opportunity for a different type of housing, maybe for our older persons. I would wonder just how affordable they might be. I would love to see them fall into an affordable housing category for us. But one of the things that jumped out at me was the elevators are great. What about in a power outage? Is there any thought process for backup power? You know, power goes out for 3 or 4 hours and we've got older people that are now dependent on stairs from 2nd and 3rd floor. And I know that's not an easy thing to build into this. I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration.
I will definitely check with the project team on that. I do know through other experience, for instance, my parents have an elevator in their home. When there is a power outage, I believe it automatically does return to the ground floor. But I will definitely look into that and send a response through planning staff.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. There's lots to like about this. I like the density. I like the accessibility. The single floor living is something that we're not seeing a lot of in East Gwillimbury. So I really like that for people with mobility issues. I'm wondering about the parking. We're still very much a driving community, and with these townhouses, we often will end up with issues with where do you put your second car. So it's hard to tell from the site plan whether there's room in the driveway for a second car, or if all of these units will have to just have one car and rely on the guest parking.
That's a very good question. And in fact, for all but I think a handful of units, maybe 4, they will all have enough room for a tandem parking, one in the garage, one in the driveway.
Excellent, thank you. And my other question was something that came up when we were in phase 1, and we had phase 2 sort of roughed in. And I had made the comment that it seemed like we were squishing in a few too many townhouses. So I do like the density, but I don't like that the whole site is paved over. There needs to be some green space in my mind for people to be able to walk to. There's lots of, the regional trail out behind and that, but that's not something that's going to be really accessible to the people in the retirement home, or if we're talking about people moving into the urban townhouses, having mobility issues. It would be nice for them to be able to walk to a parkette. And when I had commented on this during phase 1, there was some talk that maybe block 7, 8 could have a few less units in it and be able to have a little bit of green space. So I'm still thinking that's something that this community would benefit from, especially when you look at all those urban townhouses don't even have a backyard. So to be able to walk to some nice green space without having to cross a road or go down into the valley would be, I think, very beneficial for the residents.
Certainly, we agree. We have taken a hard look at the landscaping for the community, well, for phase 2, shall I say. And we look, there are some green spaces provided, for instance, where we have the community mailbox located, we've located a small seating area as well to go with it. And as you noted, there are the connections both to the MUP and to the regional trail system, which does lead to Ladder Park. But we have tried to put in as much greenery as possible along the laneway, and when we look at the larger scale, we are achieving a hierarchy of open space or exterior spaces for residents. Obviously at the macro level, the community level, we do have the trail in the park, closer on the site itself, we do have these common spaces with walkways and seating areas. And we can certainly explore options for providing a few more. We do have some larger side yards that could theoretically potentially accommodate more if desired. And then at the individual lot level, certainly the traditional towns have their exclusive rear yards, and the urban towns do have outdoor space in the form of balconies for each level as well.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have some questions that I will reserve for when we deal with the staff report, but through you to Mr. Layton, the urban towns, what's the square footage of these? I'm noting that I think there's a recreation room on the main floor. It's six, not quite 7 feet wide. I'm just wondering what the floor plan, what the square footages of these units are.
If you'll just bear with me a second, I'm going to open, I guess the benefit of doing these meetings remotely is I can access my server and pull the plans up. So if you'll bear with me a second. I do know we had this detail just recently. So the square footages do range. They start at just over 1,000 square feet, and they go up to about 1,400 square feet for end units.
Okay. Thank you. I was curious because I was, from a marketing perspective, knowing that your servicing only requires you to have the equivalent of an apartment. At what point do you call this a townhouse, or do you call this a condo, or do you call this an apartment? So I guess from that perspective, we'll have to be very cautious as that flows through the process. I guess for me, I want to echo Councillor Carruthers' comments about the amenity spaces as far as greenery, a community garden, something for someone to be able to walk out and sit down without having to access the more active, wilder areas of the trail. And I'm going to reiterate, and you'll hear it later in our meeting tonight, I'm going to reiterate the fact that I'm still concerned that we're continuing to develop this corner without a safe way for pedestrians to cross the road south into the trail connection and the amenities that are on the other side of the road. And it had been discussed as being done with either Countryman or with your second, I think this is Illumination Way. It's not here yet, and I feel strongly that we shouldn't be adding more people in here and then basically creating an island that they can't really leave safely if they're on foot. So I'll leave my comments for that at this moment, but I'll reserve the rest of my comments for when we deal with the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Cronin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to our presenter. I'll throw my name in with Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Roy DeClemente about the need for green space and access to trails as well. I was just curious, could you let me know how many guest parking spaces do you have planned? Because we know the driveways are going to be tight here, and if both cars are at home, there's no place for guests to park, and on the road, at the street, it looks like it may be a little tight. So I was just curious, once you folks are gone, council is the one left to deal with some of these problems. So I just want to make sure we address them up front and not after the fact. Could you let me know what the number of guest parking spaces will be? And as well, I think Councillor Foster was talking about affordable housing, or it's maybe now called attainable housing. Do you have a sense of what the price point would be for some of these?
Unfortunately, I don't have any information with respect to pricing. As you can appreciate, that is there's a lot of math that goes into that, and that's why I'm a planner. It's not a mathematician. But with respect to the parking question, I can advise that there are 19 visitor parking spaces that are to be provided. They are generally located on the site plan. It's probably a little hard to see, but just north of the parking for the retirement home, there was some more visitor parking that was shown at grade, and that was to be reserved for the townhouse development. I'm sure we can all appreciate there will probably be some sharing of spaces between the two uses. It's, you can put up signs all you want, but it's going to be very hard to stop people from parking where they want to park, where it's most convenient. But certainly we have the data for the retirement home, which is why we were able to, why we had requested the parking rate for that use that we did. And of course, hopefully as transit becomes a more realistic option, and if gas prices keep going up, maybe we will be able to see less parking utilization overall in general. But
okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. Mr. Layton, I just wanted to say how pleased I was to see that there is some creative housing. Many times we see plans in front of us and it's like the same old thing, cookie cutter, different, nothing different about it. And I believe that you have really strive to have something just a little bit different with the townhouses, the urban townhouses, and I congratulate you for that, because I think that once again, most of the members of council have spoken in the fact that housing, as we all know, is very expensive, and whether it's young people that are trying to get into the market or older people that are trying to get out of the market, there doesn't seem to be very much for either end of that scale. So I congratulate you. I'm very intrigued by the townhouses with the elevators, and you certainly have heard from some members of our council on some questions that perhaps need to be answered, as in the elevators, etc. But I congratulate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And with that, could I have a mover and a seconder for Mr. Layton's presentation, please? Councillor Morton and Councillor Crohn, all those in favor? And that's carried. Under item F, we have no presentations at this time. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council just passed a motion to consider items Q3 and Q4. That includes the East Gwillimbury Butterfly Way presentation, as well as the Environmental Advisory Committee report for Pollinator Gardens.
Thank you. And so I think it's M. Potter that is with us.
Yes, hi.
Just bear with me for a moment and I will pull the presentation onto the screen. There it is.
Welcome. Good to have you with us tonight. We're looking forward to your presentation. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Hello, I appreciate you sharing some of your time with me today. My name is Megan Potter, and I have lived in River Drive Park for almost 3 years. I'm a former beekeeper, and while I realize honeybees are not naturally found here, in my many years as a keeper, I saw the direct impact of climate change on the hives, and I struggled to get them through winter. Since then, I've shifted my focus onto supporting native bees and other pollinators through my gardening practices. Last winter, I began volunteering with the David Suzuki Foundation's Butterfly Way project as a Butterfly Way Ranger. The majority of the information I will be sharing with you comes directly from the David Suzuki Foundation, from webinars I've attended, and from their website. Anything else that comes up, I will credit. Next slide, please. Thank you. Always grounded in sound evidence, the David Suzuki Foundation empowers people to take action in their communities on the environmental challenges we collectively face. Through evidence-based research, policy analysis, education, and citizen empowerment, the David Suzuki Foundation aims to conserve and protect our natural environment, collaborating with nonprofit and community organizations, all levels of government, businesses, and individuals. Next slide, please. One of the many focuses the David Suzuki Foundation has is helping our pollinators who are increasingly under threat from development, industrial agriculture, and climate change. We need to work to protect them by creating homes for them in our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. A study done by the Crenfield Entomological Society in 2017 found that 76% of flying insects disappeared in the last 27 years. 76%. This can be noticed with the windshield effect. If you think back 20 or 30 years, you may remember that you used to clean off your windshield much more frequently than you do now. And it is worth mentioning that most bugs don't bite or sting. A good example being the beluga whale equivalent of the insect kingdom, the bumblebee. Next slide, please. Some of our favorite food crops, like tomatoes and blueberries, are only pollinated through buzz pollination, which can only be done by native bumblebees and not the introduced and managed honeybees. So you can't simply replace one bee for another. We need a variety of different pollinators for a variety of different reasons. Next slide, please. The loss of natural habitat due to sprawling developments is putting insects at risk. The clear cutting of land not only takes down trees and affects our canopy, but it also has impacts on the ground level with the removal of native plants. The removal of these species results in habitat loss for many insects. It's worth mentioning that although landscaping does follow a development project, native plants are usually not chosen and often a lot of sod is put down. Next slide, please. Another major threat to pollinators is industrial agriculture. The irresponsible use of pesticides and the transformation of farmland into bleak, massive monocultures has displaced and harmed countless species. This throws the ecosystem out of balance and makes it more vulnerable. This type of farming encourages pests, which then results in crops being sprayed with chemicals. Next slide, please. Thank you. In the face of climate change, it is very important to create resiliencies in the surrounding ecosystems, and choosing native plants is something we can do to help. Next slide, please. Most of you are likely aware of the decline of the monarch butterflies. This slide is showing some of our local celebrities and some that we are particularly concerned about. Specifically, you see in the bottom centered here, the Corne blue butterfly. It is no longer found in Canada due to habitat loss. It is restricted to where wild lupins grow in sandy soils, which seems like something we should have an abundance of in East Gwillimbury. Many of the most threatened insects live close to home. Cities and suburbs can be surprisingly great habitats for insects as long as we provide enough food, habitat, and shelter. By adjusting how we live and garden, we can play a vital role in bringing bees, butterflies, and other essential insects back from the brink. Collectively, we can have a big impact. Next slide, please. Native plants are important for supporting our ecosystem. So the first point to make is less care is required. Although they tend to be more weather resistant, so they're less needy, which saves you time and money. Species dependency is another good reason to plant natives. Some insects rely on specific plants for their survival, and because we are taking them out of our landscape, these insects are vanishing. And lastly, they naturally reseed. No fancy soil mediums or fussing around. They simply drop their pods and seeds, fall into the soil, or spread into the wind. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into what brings us here today, which is the David Suzuki Foundation's Butterfly Way project. The Butterfly Way project is a volunteer-led movement that is growing habitat for bees and butterflies in neighborhoods throughout Canada, and it was established in 2017. Next slide, please. The goal is to establish local butterfly ways by planting at least a dozen pollinator patches in each neighborhood or community. The Butterfly Way project shows that a small group of residents can make a big difference. Over the past 5 years, the project has grown tremendously. They've connected with neighborhood, schools, city, businesses, and community groups. To date, we have established 75 Butterfly Ways in communities and neighborhoods across Canada, and I would like East Gwillimbury to be the 76th. Next slide, please. In 2021, we created 2 community pollinator gardens in River Drive Park and established 2 pollinator gardens on private residence, landing East Gwillimbury a spot on the David Suzuki Foundation's Butterfly Way map, which is what you see on this slide. So far, we have received a tremendous amount of support by Councillor Crothers, the Environmental Advisory Committee, Tessa Smith, Grant Mitchin, and Jeff Meggett, and others within our community. I apologize for mispronouncing names. Next slide, please. This little parkette is nestled between River Drive Park and the Holland Landing River. It's completely underutilized. I thought it would be a great space to add some beauty and interest with pollinator garden. Next slide, please. On the corner of Oak and Martin is the River Drive Park Community Center. It was another blank canvas, nothing but sod and a few trees. Next slide, please. Bear Oaks Family Naturalist Park was enthusiastic to get involved in the project. They used a variety of native plants, focusing mostly on ones they didn't already have growing naturally around the park. Next slide, please. Again, trying to maximize underutilized space, this garden was put in at the side of my house. We had some trees pruned over the winter, we bucked up the logs, and we used them to edge the garden bed. And if you plant it, they will come. In the first year, I found a noticeable increase in butterflies on our property, monarch swallowtails, and red admirals. And it's very exciting to see how quickly just selecting plants in a strategic way really does make a difference. Next slide, please. With the support of the Environmental Advisory Committee, we have established a subcommittee focused on the East Gwillimbury Butterfly Way project to take this project forward by engaging our community and helping our ecosystem thrive. Our mission to support the ecosystem and community by increasing and supporting pollinators in East Gwillimbury. Next slide, please. In order to be part of the Butterfly Way, a garden must include a minimum of 5 native plants, and 2 of those need to be host plants. The gardener must also participate in at least 2 of the following practices: plant a diversity of species blooming from spring to fall, leave some bare ground for nesting bees, leave dead hollow stems for cavity nesting bees, include features such as rocks and old logs, don't use pesticides, no mow May, and leave the leaves. Next slide, please. I threw this picture in. It's a pollinator garden example in the town of Mono. So I would like to see this grow well beyond the minimum of 12 pollinator gardens. We see this as a starting point. If we have any chance of tackling the global issues surrounding climate change, we need it to be a collective effort. We think it would be really great if our community members could see the town of East Gwillimbury demonstrating the importance on how we garden in conjunction with our ecosystem. By leading a good example and encouraging others, collectively, we can make a difference. Next slide, please. And my email is up on the screen here. If anyone wants to get in touch, if they have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And thank you very much for sharing your time with me today.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions of our presenter, please? I'm not seeing any at this time. I'm sure once you're gone, someone will think about it, and we know where to reach you. You've left your coordinates for us, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for the presentation, please? Councillor Crothers, Councillor Persicini, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have no presentations in our agenda. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next item is Q4, which is the Environmental Advisory Committee report entitled Pollinator Gardens.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Goldsworthy, and I'm just going to carry on with the report presentation that Megan Potter just provided. I am a member of the East Gwillimbury Environmental Advisory Committee, and I do want to say thank you very much to Megan for presenting that report tonight, and also to Mayor and Council and members of the public in attendance. And I do want to take this opportunity to present that report with support from Councillor Carruthers to the town of East Gwillimbury. And just to briefly summarize that we are looking for the town to endorse the pollinator report on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Committee and the subcommittee for the pollinator gardens. And really just to understand the purpose of that report is to help enhance our local environment, to promote the Butterfly Way project as the David Suzuki Foundation has organized, and to get endorsement from town council and staff to make this possible throughout the town. I won't go through the entire report. It is available there, of course, to read at your first opportunity, and we hope that you'll have a good look at that when you get a chance. The gardens will be a great way for the town to meet some commitments to support local pollinators in East Gwillimbury and through the Butterfly Way project. And in conclusion, I would like to thank the efforts of the East Gwillimbury Advisory Committee for bringing that forward. And hopefully we can get that support to maximize local efforts here in EG and support this project as a whole. So with that in mind, I leave it for you to review and to proceed as you see fit. And thanks again to Megan Potter for her presentation.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Not so much a question as some suggestions and maybe even a little bit of brainstorming here. When I saw that map, I thought, I know for sure that there are more of these landing spots across our community that already exist, and we just don't have them on the map. And so, for example, I know that there's our EG Master Gardeners, and our EG gardeners all have incredible gardens that are just chock-a-block full of these native plants and other ornamentals that that would be perfect for this Butterfly Way. I think we can very easily get to, is it 75 locations?
No, it's actually just a minimum of 12 to meet the requirements, but I would like to have much, much more than that if possible. So
absolutely, that's the minimum.
Yes, yes.
So what I would like to suggest is that we get you guys connected in with the EG gardeners, and our public library has a seed library. It's a seed collection that's loaned out to residents. I would love to see some seeds for these pollinator plants, these native plants, put into that seed bank with a little brochure about this initiative, so that people can be aware of it and know how that they can sign up their property. Does someone have to come to your house and confirm that you are undertaking all of these initiatives, or is it just sort of a trust thing that you say, hey, I got a ton of milkweed and I don't mow very often?
Yeah, I could speak to that. Just to jump in about the seed packs at the libraries, we are actually working on getting some seeds right now and bringing those forward to the libraries. So that's underway with notice on how to properly seed. So hopefully that will be available for people shortly. And the town has already assisted with that to some measure. And with respect to the second question, I think maybe Councillor Carruthers or Megan might be able to answer that one there.
Yeah, I can take that. First of all, thank you for your comments and your support. It's nice to know that we're on the same thought process. We are actually involved with the EG Gardeners group, and actually several of their members are on our Butterfly Way committee. So we're kind of laying the groundwork right now to start off spring in a really efficient way, and yeah, we are working in conjunction with them. So I suspect in a few months we will start being able to connect with people. What we want to do is what we're looking to do is give people options. If people want to email us and send pictures of their garden, that's absolutely fine. That meets our needs. We are also able to come by and do a quick site visit. And people will have the option of having a sign to display in their yard or not. So if they do choose to take a sign for their garden, then we'll be dropping it off anyway. So we could just kind of do a little check and make sure they meet all the requirements.
Wonderful. And I think it might also be helpful if we get some information into our new resident materials. So when people take possession of those new homes that have sometimes they don't even have the sod down yet. And then they start to dream about what they're going to put in their garden, and they start shopping at the garden center. It would be nice for them to have some information about an initiative that for the community they've just moved into. So very much in support of this initiative. And if you need my address, you can come and check it out because I think I qualify.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll drive by and see your gardens have changed this year.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, I think this is a great idea. And I'm wondering if there isn't a way for us to make more town-owned land available to this in some of our parks. I'm thinking along the lines of something, if we could make some plots of land available, maybe you could get some community groups to buy in to actually take part in those, or youth groups to get that done. I think about the parks and along all our trails. I mean, maybe we need to get more people involved, but there should be lots of opportunity for us to make different spaces to push this forward.
Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you for all the great comments. This has, ever since the Environmental Committee started looking at this, it's really just grown with so many great ideas and so many members of our staff who have started to contribute. The gardens that Megan's already got underway, both on town property in River Drive Park, looking to do more of that. We had Grant attend one of our subcommittee meetings, and he had so many great ideas. Everything is small and incremental. There's no big council ask right now, but we just wanted to get council's endorsement so that staff can run with this. There's things the library can be doing. There's lots of stuff that Parks and Rec have said that they can be looking at, changing up some of their plantings and that kind of stuff. Stuff with no budget implications, but just stuff that they can be doing on their own. And so that's why the report is just basically asking for council endorsement, because there's already great stuff happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very exciting for us. We're green. We've got lots of space. Mr. Webster, I'm wondering if there is a staff member that we could connect with this project and have a look at perhaps some of our parks in maybe a corner that's not being used, or an open space that can promote this as well. And I know that staff are busy, but I think that we do have some horticulturists on our team and people who look after our parks areas, that there must be some little corners that perhaps are ideal for this. Might there be a staff member that we can ask to have a role in this project as well?
There certainly could. I think a few names have been mentioned, but under General Manager Karmazin, we have a raft of folks, and Tessa Smith brings her award-winning Niagara region and Niagara parks to us as well. So, Madam Mayor, that's for sure that'll be fully supported, this initiative.
Wonderful. And then we'll look back and wait and see, maybe early fall, have an update to all members of council, and keep in mind, it's not just the people that you're seeing here tonight, but those that are visiting with us virtually. And the more that they do, the more we can get the word out. So thank you very much, both of you, for being with us tonight. I wondered if I could have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation. Councillor Crohn, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, there was a second recommendation there, in addition to just receiving,
Yes.
that council endorsed the efforts to establish the Butterfly Way across East Gwillimbury and encourage staff in all departments to find ways to support pollinators in our town. I'm happy to move that.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll go back to our agenda. We are at item. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, you are now under item F, which is presentations.
Thank you. And there are no presentations at this time that I'm aware of.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt the council minutes from our meeting held on March the 8th. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Foster. Be it resolved that council adopt the council minutes from the meeting held on March 8th, 2022. All those in favor? And that's carried. We are at item H, and that is our COVID update. And Mr. Webster, I'll turn it over to you to move forward with this one. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, as we're all aware, the province and the federal government continue to relax COVID measures. Yesterday was a very prominent day for opening facilities and the removal of mask requirement. And I would like to pass it over to Deputy CAO Mark Valchich, who has led our COVID recovery team, to highlight tonight's overview.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Madam Mayor, through you. So our 40th update for you this evening, and it was in fact just over 2 years ago that we entered the pandemic, and we moved from largely in-person services and activities to virtual, including the council meetings, not unlike what we're participating in this evening. So as of yesterday, as the CAO indicated, there were some significant easing of restrictions. Over the past year and a bit, council has been supportive of two key criteria to be satisfied before you would consider resuming your meetings in the council chamber. Those two criteria were that that you could do so without any major adjustments to facilities like partition barriers and that sort of thing for health and safety. And the second criteria was that there was no requirement for significant PPE, because as you recall, throughout the pandemic, it would have required mask use and perhaps even protective goggles to be in the chamber. So as of yesterday, both of those criteria, at least by way of regulation and health department guidance, have been satisfied. They're no longer required. So at this point, staff have been for several weeks now preparing to be able to facilitate from a technical point of view what we're referring to as hybrid meetings in the council chamber. So that means that at your call, Madam Mayor and Council, when you choose to go back into the chamber, at that point, we would be prepared from a support point of view to be able to facilitate having attendance and participation in person, as well as attendance and participation virtually as appropriate. So that could mean council members, could be in the chamber, but we could have some virtual. It could mean staff, some attendance in person, some virtual. And it also, really importantly, means that members of the public that might find it beneficial to be able to attend virtually, from a time and efficiency point of view, could in fact participate, whether it be presentation or deputation, without having to actually physically come into the council chamber. So some great options from a program and service point of view for the residents of East Gwillimbury. So at this point, Madam Mayor, I think what had been discussed over the last several months was that whatever we would do somewhat cautiously and sort of gradually. And so at this point, the option that I think is available to you is to resume some level of in-person attendance at the council chamber, for your upcoming council meetings. One thing we might want to consider is starting with members of council and perhaps a couple of staff, could be the clerk, CAO, office staff, etc., and then over time starting to see perhaps increased attendance or participation in person if and as required. But I did want to emphasize that in speaking to all of you over the last many months, it was impressed to us that it was important that we continue to offer some sort of hybrid access to those meetings, not only for members of council, but for staff and importantly for members of the public. So I can tell you that we believe that we are prepared to be able to support that sort of meeting at this point in time. So the earliest opportunity that you'd have to start to transition back would be your next meeting, which would be, I believe it's April, the clerk can tell me, I think it's April 4th or 5th?
April 5th, Tuesday,
April 5th. And so, Madam Mayor, one of the things that you might want to consider with council is just determining if that's something you would like to do, and if so, perhaps pass a resolution to that effect so staff can start to prepare for the final setup from our end in terms of supporting you to do that. So that's really the essence of the update for you today, Madam Mayor. Probably one of the more impactful updates that we've had in a long time, because we're really seeing ourselves at this point transitioning to a really different phase of the pandemic. And that I just want to also indicate that we continue to utilize our risk-based decision-making framework for expanding and contracting services and access, and should hopefully in the unlikely event we see ourselves back into some other wave or period of constraint, we will be well positioned to transition and adapt if we have to. But at this point, we're hopeful that we'll continue to see things remain open and flexible.
Thank you very much. I think I'm seeing smiles on people's faces. High fives, I'm sure. I think that we've all been waiting to be able to come back into the council chamber and do the job that we know and we enjoy, because we are working together. While we work together on a day like today, we're making it happen, but there certainly isn't the same feeling in a virtual meeting than there is sitting in the council chamber. So I'm expecting, I'm not seeing anybody that is adverse to this. I'm expecting that with the faces I'm looking at, that April the 5th should be a day with a big circle around it. Questions, Councillor Crothers, go ahead.
Thanks. I hope April 5th is the day. I'm dying to get out of this, but as much as we want COVID to be over, COVID is not over. I had 3 people I know yesterday come down with COVID. First day the masks are off, and I know more people who got COVID yesterday than the whole pandemic put together. So I worry about what the next 2 weeks looks like with the masks coming off, kids back in school after March break. I worry about what's going to happen. We're not as a province. We're not testing like we were earlier in the pandemic, so we really don't know what the transmission rate is out there in the community. So to your point, Mr. Belchick, about being able to contract again, I think a motion is in order to look at getting back to a hybrid meeting, but we need to be very, very vigilant and ready to pull the plug before April 5th if it does look like cases are going up. It's just like I said earlier about snow tires. We want spring to be here, but all of us have our snow tires on still, knowing that there could be one more blast of winter, and I think there could still be one more blast of COVID. And I just hope that we're not too stubborn or too optimistic, maybe wanting to get back into the chambers and do ourselves a disservice by doing it a little bit too early. So I'm happy to be looking at a hybrid, but as long as staff are committed to pulling the plug on that if things get worse over the next couple of weeks. Thanks.
And I'm sure they will. They have been very vigilant all the way through this. So I'm quite sure that if there's any issues, they'll be telling us long before we even know we have a problem. Other comments and questions? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead, please.
I was just going to scream, let's do it, but I think we're all just anxious to be back into the chambers. I support Councillor Carruthers' comment that, if we're going to do it, that's fine, but we need to be mindful that it will be a hybrid and that there will be an option for members of council who need to self-isolate, members of staff who need to self-isolate, who would still be able to meaningfully participate in the meetings. I did have a slightly different question about the COVID tracking and statistics. I hear a fair amount of information about wastewater monitoring, and I feel like it's not our staff who are monitoring COVID levels in wastewater. Is it being done at the region? And if so, is that a component that we could use in some of our updates to council? Because we're hearing, on media reports that say, yes, case counts seem to be low, but we're not testing, but we're still finding it in wastewater, and that's a bit of a bellwether for ebb and flow of cases increasing in a community or not. And so I'm just wondering if that might be something that we could report on, similar to the way that we flipped to use hospitalizations rather than positive PCR test results. Just a question or a request from that angle, just so that we can continue to feel like we have some meaningful data coming to us. Thanks.
Mr. Belchick?
Madam Mayor, so that is in fact one of the ways that public health is sort of assessing the presence of the COVID virus, in our community. And so through our CEMC, Chief McKenzie and the regional group that he meets with, they get access to the updated public health information on a weekly basis, and so we can certainly determine whatever information they have available and pass that along accordingly to council.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the discussion that we're having at this session. I think it's very helpful. We've always talked about a thoughtful, phased approach, and for the 5th, if I may, if the statistics continue to be positive, I think our focus will be initially on getting elected officials invited, and it's up to their discretion. We don't need all 7 members there. There are technological aspects of this as well with the technology, because it moves us to a different platform than the tiles. And it has the one camera. We're looking at possibly upgrading to a camera that moves in the council chamber. So our first focus will be on the 5th to open it up for elected officials. Could be still hybrid at their discretion, and then slowly starting to introduce more staff other than the clerk into the chambers as well. In particular, what we might do, what we've talked about, is for departments that maybe have items on an agenda, we would maybe have in-person attendance, and those that don't necessarily have an item might not be in attendance. So it's going to be a thoughtful, phased approach that we bring forward. We're certainly not going to try to hit a home run on April 5th. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Webster, I might add, if somewhere between now and April the 5th that things go a little sideways, then council are certainly prepared to come back and have another discussion. It's not carved in stone by any means. It's a date that we've really pulled out of the air to start to move forward. But should there be some issues in the community or greater, farther away, then I think we have to be mindful of that as well. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
I think there was some mention of needing a motion to this effect, and I would be happy to give one to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder would be Councillor Persicini. Go ahead. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And are there is there anything else under our COVID update, Mr. Velchik?
Nothing further, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to receive Mr. Velchik's report tonight, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. We're at Corporate Services, Economic Development Branch Memo, Business Incubator, Accelerator Program Update.
Madam Mayor, with your permission, I would just ask our Director of Economic Development and Job Creation, Margot Bejean, just to make a few comments to provide some context in relation to this memo that you might find helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and through you, Madam Mayor. This is really just comes by way of an update. As Council is aware, entrepreneurship development is one of the key 5 strategic priorities for the updated economic development strategy. We've had a very productive collaboration over the last year with Georgina and York University in working towards developing entrepreneurial programs, and this is sort of the next phase. We had anticipated launching this earlier. We didn't get the funding we anticipated. We regrouped and sort of reimagined the project, and I believe we're going to be successful in securing some external funding along with the contribution that the partners have made. So our focus in East Gwillimbury has been on creating an incubation and acceleration ecosystem. We're not focused on a physical location at this point. Our partners in Georgina, as you may be aware, are outfitting a physical center in Sutton, but participants in any program will be able to make use of the facility in Georgina. They may participate in programs that are being offered at East Gwillimbury locations, and we look forward to collaborating throughout. I think it's going to be a really great program. We're customizing some of the deliverables using local business members of the business community as mentors, so that we'll have sort of local, local input and help to foster the connections of not only emerging entrepreneurs, but we also see this as a way of being able to connect with other elements of the population who may be challenged to attach to the labor market, for example. So we hope to leverage this as part of our inclusion efforts as well. So happy to answer any questions if there are any on the update memo.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Beijing? Councillor Crowe, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not so much of a question, just a comment of appreciation. Thank you so much for working so hard on this and getting it through. This is such a wonderful program. It's great that we encourage and nurture entrepreneurs. They're the job creators of tomorrow. So we need to do everything we can to help these folks. It's wonderful that we're doing this, and the partnership with Georgina is wonderful as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Roy DeClemente, all those in favor? And that's carried. Are there any other items under corporate services at this time?
Nothing further at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move to finance. That's item J. And we have a wastewater bylaw update.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So every year the town is required to pass a bylaw to enact water and wastewater rates that were approved through the budget process by council. And for the third year in a row, council has approved that the rates remain the same as they had previously. This memo is here to support the bylaw that is in the agenda further along in your program, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Questions? I'm not seeing any. We will we'll vote on this, and then when we get to you one, we'll back up a little bit and deal with that as well. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DiClemente, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. We are at item J, and that's development services.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And the first item we have is the site plan application at the corner of Leslie and Mount Albert Road. As the presenter have explained before, this is the development and implementation of previous official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment from 2019. And the proposal at hand is 42 townhouse units and 44 urban townhouse units. And this application has been circulated to both our internal and external agencies. And we're at a stage where we believe that we're ready for a approval for recommendations subject to condition as outlined in the staff report. And happy to answer any other additional questions council may have.
Thank you. Questions of staff? I'm not seeing any. Councillor Roy DiClemente, did you have a question? Go ahead, please.
I think Councillor Foster had his hand up first, though, so I'll let him go first.
He's saying no, so you just go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Cook. I guess my big concern, I think, at this point would be that we still have an outstanding question about how we're going to be servicing condominium corporations and condominiums type situations for real estate with respect to waste and water treatment. And I would prefer to make sure that we had that decision made before we move forward with this. And that would be simply because if you're going to move things around in order to be able to collect waste, and then we decide we are not going to provide that service, then I think it's not necessarily fair to the applicant if we're going to be still making that decision in future. So that was one thought, one concern I had. I did feel that these units were a little boxy, and I wasn't sure if they had been reviewed by our architectural control guideline experts. I think we have somebody on staff or on retainer who reviews applications within the context of those architectural control guidelines. Because I know that some of the other developments nearby have a great deal more architectural features and character, I guess is the best way of putting it. I wonder if you might be able to comment on that, please, Mr. Cook.
Sure, yeah, with regards to, through you, Madam Mayor, with regards to the comments on waste management, is that my understanding that with our CIS department, it's in conversation with the applicants that we're able to provide some tweaks to the plans without really jeopardizing a full reconfiguration of the plan. And one of the recommendations in the staff report is to allow for that minor adjustment at hand, and that if in the event that the condo corporation does want to go municipal servicing, we can allow for that. And if they choose not to, it can still be status quo to be a private entity. So we believe that there could be minor tweaks without really changing the overall plans, just to adjustment for the private pickup portion of it. And your second question with regards to the architectural control, there The architectural control has addendum was submitted as part of this application. The original guidelines does not cover this area of the property, and the author of the original urban design guideline has provided their approval on how it meets the intent and compatible forms of this development. Although it might not be identical, certainly the pitch roof style and as well as the material choices of stone and brick does be complementary to the existing forms in the surrounding areas. So John G. Williams is the architectural firm that has provided the approval that it meets the general intent of the guidelines from 2011 on that point.
Okay. I still feel like they're a little bit, I mean, obviously they are boxy because they have to be to a certain extent, but I felt that there could have been more done to make them a little bit more appealing. My largest concern, and I've raised this at every single step of the way when we deal with this corner, is the fact that residents cannot get across Mount Albert Road to access the trail on the south side. We talked about it at Countryman Way. We've talked. We raised it when the building went in, and I know the mayor did what she could to try and get York Region to step up to the plate. I hesitate to add another 86 units worth of residents to this corner by creating an urban island, without them being able to cross the road safely. And we've made such beautiful investments across the way that it's a real shame that they can't access it safely without taking their lives into their hands. And assuming that some of these people would be not quite so fast on their feet, that again is another concern. So I'm not sure where we want to go with that, but I'm deeply concerned about it, and I've raised it each time, and I'm not having much effect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You are having effect, but we're just not getting what we want. Mr. Webster, go ahead, please.
It's interesting watching these discussions because council has over the years, Madam Mayor, as you know, focused on 2 crosswalks, and for many, many years we asked for one in Hall Landing, which never met the warrants, and we seemed to ask, and lo and behold, perseverance paid off, and we've got one, and it was a real great addition there. With regards to this one, General Manager Molinari has some updates. We've been really working with the region. It is a very key pedestrian linkage to connect the community together, the assets there. So I would suggest that General Manager Molinari respond to the status of that, and hopefully we're moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Tom. We have been in contact with the region on this, and we continue to press the region in order to look at this area and respond positively with regards to installing a crossing. One of the things that they require is for it to meet warrants, and in order to meet warrants, it requires more pedestrian activity. So we find ourselves in a chicken and egg situation right now, so. We can continue, we will continue to discuss this matter with the region, but I think the more load that's put in that area, the more chance we are going to have at being able to actually finally get that crossing in place. So I know that may not be the answer that you're looking for, but I think that's the reality of the situation.
If I may, a further question. When you say it needs to meet warrants, is it that we need more pedestrians in the area, or do we need more cars in the area?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's more pedestrians. So we've got a plan whereby, and we've reached out to the region already this year to get an assessment done in spring once we have people out on our trail network to have those pedestrians counted as they cross the road, and that information will be used as the basis for determining whether the warrant is met or not.
I guess the problem that I have is that it is fundamentally unsafe. It is like it's like telling the community, cross here, we know it's dangerous, but we need you to take your life into your hands so that we can get it safer for you. It's like asking for an accident. And there is no way that a mother pushing a stroller trying to get to Morel Park at the splash pad is going to do that. Nor is there a senior citizen who wants to meet her friend for tea across the way. I'm at a loss for words.
We can tell that. That's unusual.
Yes, it doesn't make sense to me that you would ask people to do something that is dangerous, that we also know is dangerous, in order to justify an investment, when we know as a community that there is a need there for it. And we've had success in the past in getting things installed that didn't meet warrants when it was installed, but within just a few months' time, they did meet warrants. And I'll use the signalization at Manor Hampton and Colonel Whaling as another example of an intersection that didn't meet warrants. We insisted, and now we have a crossing guard there.
Councillor Persichini, go ahead, please.
I guess they're waiting for an accident to happen, and then they say, wow, we should put one in there. I mean, it's like they put a stop sign, you know, somebody has a big accident, somebody gets killed, they put a stop sign. So it is the life of the region and versus the East Gwillimbury and the rules and regulations that drives us everybody crazy. But I agree with Tara. Thanks.
Mr. Molinari.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. The region has warrants, but they are also willing to work with us on this matter. We've had so many discussions with them, and to your point, Councillor Roy DiClemente and Councillor Persichini, I don't think they're looking for it to be a hard meeting of the warrants. If we can show that they're close and that we've got additional development coming in the area, those sorts of things go a long way in order to make the case. But the bottom line is you have to have a certain base amount of pedestrian activity at that location for this process to even start. So it's a bit of an iterative process, but the region is certainly working with us on this, and they know this has been around for a number of years, and we've had so many conversations about it. I think we'll get there. We just have it. The more load we can put on that location, I think the better our chances are of actually getting it. And it's just a matter of, I don't think it's a matter of when, of if, it's a matter of when that's going to come into play.
Mr. Molinari, knowing now that that site is going to have substantially more construction there, is there a plan in place to work with them now and talk about the numbers that are coming? I know they're not there standing on the side of the road yet, but I've seen that at the region sometimes, that there are subdivisions that are just starting to in ground, and it seems fairly quickly that by the time those houses are occupied, the crosswalk is in place. So I'm wondering if we take that approach a little more. I'm certainly willing and able to take another go at it myself. I come by there every day, and there's people standing waiting. I stop and let them across because that's the only way that it's safe to have your eye. They see you, you see them, and away you go. But it's probably our most important project right now with the region.
Agreed, Madam Mayor. We will follow up with them, and we'll continue to have those conversations.
Thank you, and I will as well. Councillor Roy DiClemente, I think you've started that discussion.
I think we've brought it to at least some form of a resolution. I guess the other piece of it was sort of a higher level question, and that was the availability of servicing. At this point, this development doesn't have enough servicing allocation to build. They have some, but not enough. At what point do we? I know we have somewhere in our planning documents, we have a policy that says if servicing is not imminent, your application is premature. And I don't know if that's necessarily applying here, because they do have some allocation available, but I'd like to better understand that issue before we move forward with this.
Mr. Molinari?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to GM Cook, please.
Go ahead,
So
Mr.
yes. Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, the servicing allocation for this particular project, although it does not have enough servicing to complete the proposal, as the councillor was mentioning about this, but it does have servicing in the immediate time frame. So this owner on the site plan is part of the Sharon Landowners Group, which is part of the original YDSS agreement. And this Sharon Owners Group is now finalizing plans in between the York region, town staff, and to come up with a Sharon inline solution that will help to complete approved draft plans here. So the servicing is going to be completed by the late 2022 to early 2023 is my understanding. So the servicing, it's actually going to be provided fairly soon for this particular area of town.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, we do have a growth management workshop coming up next month as well, and we'll be focusing much more on topics such as this, and essentially the oversized pipe that runs through the valley system. They're looking at a gating system of to allow for all of the incomplete streets in the existing Sharon community build out to be completed. So it's actually would be positive from that time view. So we'll have a full update on at the growth management workshop, April 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Looking here. Oh, Councillor Foster, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem, Madam Mayor. I know we got off onto another subject there, but that was good. I'm glad I didn't jump in and break your thoughts there, Councillor Roy DeClemente. Getting back to the development itself, and you know, I've already said that I was kind of intrigued with the urban townhouses and how that would fit into our community. But I have to say that I'm a little disappointed again with a development like this. And you know, going through our official plan exercise, I understand more and better after every meeting with Mr. Palmer and our staff about densities and all that kind of targets that we need to meet. But I have to tell you, looking at this development, it is really, really tight. Buildings are close to the street. We look at all the artist renderings and they're always in the summer. I would love to see an artist rendering after a 2-foot fall of snow and all the sidewalks covered and, you know, and no place for snow storage, you know, really to speak of in the development. We talk about 19 parking spots, a good fall of snow like we had a couple of times this winter, and half of those would be full of snow. You know, I just look at this stuff and I somehow think that I would love to challenge the developers to, you know, come out and help us with this problem, because after, you know, Councillor Cronin said it right. When it's all said and done, we're the ones that hear all the complaints about this type of thing. And I don't want to hear things like the fire department aerial truck couldn't get down the road because there was too many cars, and the snowplow couldn't go around the corner because there was too many cars. I understand the value of, you know, using each and every building lot that they can get. I get that and the density targets, but somehow I think that we need to be doing something different. And I would hope that, you know, maybe some of these developers can come out and give us a hand with that. And I don't want to sound like I'm raining down on these particular people at Sharon Corners. I just, on the whole, I just felt I had to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
I echo everything that Councillor Foster said. Earlier, Mr. Cook had said about tweaking the plan a little bit so that we could get the garbage trucks down the street. There's one portion there that's a dead end street, so that's going to take a little bit more than tweaking. So I'm a little bit concerned about how it looks right now, and feel like I would like it to come back with some of our questions answered. Councillor Foster is absolutely right about the snow removal. It's one of the things I had on my list to ask about. Where are we putting all that snow? I had asked during the presentation about parking, and I just want to get some confirmation from staff about the number of driveways that would be able to fit a reasonable sized car. I don't want us to end up with a bunch of people. If you have more than a smart car, you're hanging out into the street, and to Terry's point, you know, a fire truck's trying to come down and there's cars hanging out into the street. So I would like a little bit more information on the parking in the driveway. About if we're going to service that dead end street at the bottom. And also I'll reiterate what I said earlier about a walkable parkette. I think a bench in front of a mailbox isn't going to quite cut it. There's a lot of pavement in this plan, and a little bit of green space to absorb some water would be a good thing, and be nice for residents to be able to walk to it. So I would love to see this come back. I think it goes a long ways to what we want, just not quite there yet.
Mr. Webster, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, this echoes a conversation we had before this meeting, because there's a lot of very interesting items here. This is a new, unique built form. I totally concur with what the councillor is saying, what council's comments have been. I think they've been great questions. And I think working with the developer, who's a very credible developer who's been working in our community for quite a while now, and Mr. Layton, I think we could take these questions, and if it's referred back to staff, and that's a very valid option. Council does not have to decide and make a decision at every meeting. It's a very helpful move actually to refer it back for further discussion and consideration of these issues, and it'll allow us to bring back a refined presentation. And there are many issues here that have to be dealt with, and I would welcome that as an option that council considers moving this forward at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. I'm seeing nods here. Do we have a member of council prepared to request that this be deferred and come back at Mr. Webster? What would be the time frame that you would be looking at? A month?
I think that would be realistic. I think 2 weeks. The reports are due tomorrow, so I think to be honest with you, to allow for 4 weeks and to allow for these points to be really sleeves to be rolled up, discussions to be held. It might involve another presentation from the builder developer as well. I think that's helpful.
I'm seeing nods. Do I have anyone that would make a motion to defer? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I think what we'll do is that we'll receive the report, and that we would refer it back to staff for further discussion and refinement based on the feedback provided at today's council meeting.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Foster. Any questions, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We are at item number 2, and that is regarding comments on the draft York Region official plan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the next item here is comments to the draft York Region official plan. Similar to the town here, they're doing their draft official plan and seeking comments. Their comments is due by the end of the month, and this memo here is to advise council on are generally supportive of the York Region official plan, with small adjustments to the languages that they've been using, facing policies and schedule refinements, and as well as the summarized bullets on page 1 of this report. So I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from members of council? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I realized that I wasn't on mute, and I apologize if you heard screaming children. There's a soccer practice being left for. I totally support and completely support the work that staff have done in identifying some of the potential wrinkles within the East Gwillimbury lens of the regional official plan. I've raised this as part of our own discussions for our official plan, and that is the employment targets and the ratio to residents and jobs, because of the fact that they've left 70% of the white belt was put in, and that other 30% were employment lands. It doesn't speak. There's no language there that speaks to the long-term vision of that, and references what will happen when the Bradford bypass is implemented, and we end up with people clamoring to develop along the second concession corridor, for example. So. My other concern was also with respect to the policy that ties planning to implementation and development region-wide, rather than putting it on the availability of servicing. And I think that has a tremendous impact that I'm worried will really hurt our abilities to plan our own community in a timely fashion. And so I guess my big question is there something that we as council can do to lend a stronger voice to that of the staff comments? Because right now this is the staff's comments and we've read it and yeah, okay, staff, we agree, send that along. I feel like there are some things here that require a bit more, I don't want to call it highlighting, but that we need to speak to it more and advocate for on behalf of our community to make sure that the changes are made that benefit us.
Thank you. Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, there certainly could be some amendments to this and some additions made by council. And I believe that General Manager Cook and his staff, we have Director Adam Robb on this file as well. But those are both some salient points that could be added about employment and other matters that could emphasize council's priorities even more than what the staff comments would be. I would refer it over to General Manager Cook.
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor, with regards to the job ratios in residential, the numbers in this report reflects the York Region's forecast to 2051. And through our public consultation and period of the town's draft official plan, which has policies for the full build out up to post 2051. So the ratio in our draft OP will be closer to the 1 job for every 2 residents. And as regional staff continues to work on these forecast numbers, we can definitely provide these comments back directly to them. By way of this report, council is providing their stamp and their voice through this of the approval of this report to be passed on to York Region staff. And with regards to the phasing policy, yes, it's in the staff report. We do highlight that it is one of our strong concerns here about continue to provide this message to York Region. Official plan needs to recognize the requirements of infrastructure and servicing availability. So those 2 points are in the report, and we can continue to work with York Region staff as they continue their MCR process here.
Thank you for that. It makes us look like we're going to become a bedroom community, and that's not the plan and that's not the intention. But when you look at that population number, that's 3,000 people a year for 30 years that we would be adding, or about 8 people a day for 30 years. They won't necessarily, we're going to want to have jobs for those people. But when we look at this plan, it doesn't show that we're going to be able to provide that. The other thing I did want to highlight was I think there's mapping that surrounds the 2 regional transit nodes, and they talk about, that's because it's the radius around that transit node with about a 10-minute walk. The one that's around the East Gwillimbury GO station right now is not big enough. You can actually make that 10-minute walk pretty simple right now. And so I think we need to advocate for it to be larger, because some of the policies that are associated with those transit nodes are very permissive and are appealing to us. So I'd like those policies to apply to a greater area as great an area as possible. Because right now I think it goes to maybe the Rogers Reservoir parking lot, which before Metrolinx expanded that parking lot, people were parking there and walking to the GO station. And that has nothing to do with any of the other services that would be in that place in the fullness of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I would expect at this point that I'm seeing people taking notes. And what would we like to do with this resolution in front of us? Go ahead, Councillor Roy-DeClemente.
So I guess at this point, we're providing the region with our comments through our staff. I'd like to have a report back from staff letting us know how that process plays out and whether we were successful in advocating for some of those changes. Does that seem fair?
That seems fair.
Okay, I'll give you a motion to that effect then.
So we have the resolution that's here and you're going to add on to it saying
that we receive the report and that it be forwarded to the Regional Municipality of York to inform their process, and that staff continue to monitor and report back on the progress being made. In progress being made to effect the changes suggested.
You comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
And do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. We're on item number 3 of the Joint Development Services, Community Parks, Recreation, Culture. And it's all about the Howard House.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item on the agenda here is about the Howard House, as you mentioned. The purpose of this memo is to inform council that after years of deliberating and studies being completed, an agreeable location for the Howard House to be placed on the Sharon Temple has been determined by parties of staff, well and development, as well as the Sharon Temple. Now, this memo is not intended to require council to make any decisions on the technical details of relocating the Howard House or make any commitments. A future site plan application will be brought in front of council, the Heritage Advisory Committee, as well as the Ontario Heritage Trust to just have those detailed discussions. So this memo is really just to inform council on the proposed location, or the preferred location that they want to place the Howard House. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have an update in front of us today. Are any comments, questions? I have a motion to receive. Councillor Foster, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? That's carried. Number 4 on the agenda is the scheduling of public meeting for the Cannabis Production Facilities Interim Control Bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We normally don't request for public meeting dates. This was thought that was warrant one, just to update council that we did have the interim control bylaw that's set to expire in June of 2022. And during the time of the interim control bylaw, we restricted any production facilities in town, new ones. And during this time, staff has been busy conducting information gathering, as well as a study of best practices review to understand essentially the question, where should these facilities be? And we want to inform council that we will be having our statutory public meeting in April. And the notices, because of the Planning Act requirement, will be going out at the end of March. And at that public meeting, staff is anticipated to provide council with a few options for discussion. And we would, at the end of the day, would have to provide some type of a zoning bylaw amendment before the June deadline. Otherwise, the interim control bylaw will expire and we will not be able to enact another interim control bylaw or extend that bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Cronin, then Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to speak to this, that I think it's important that when we have these public meetings, that we advertise them properly and extensively in the rural parts of our town, because that was the areas most impacted by it. I would also suggest that perhaps we could do some background public education on this as well, because I think we've been tremendously successful in fending off the illegal operators. We don't necessarily have a problem with folks that are following the legal municipal process, but it's the people that came in and completely had disregard for a municipal process and bylaws. So I think perhaps maybe even York Region Police, who were critical to our success, could play a role. I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion. But at the end of the day, I'd like to see that we have proper education on this and proper communication so that we can get as much public input as possible. I think that is critical for everyone to understand, but also for everyone to have input to how they'd like to see this move forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. Councillor Crone, would you move this motion, please? And seconded by Councillor Roy DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Can I make a joke about the date? 4/20. It's 4/20. We're having a meeting on 4/20. There. That's tonight's levity. Sorry.
Nope. Item number 5 is Development Services Planning Branch 19101 Leslie Street, and a plan amendment. Vince's Plaza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the application at hand is on 19101 Leslie Street, and also known as Vince's Plaza. And in April 4th, 2018, Council approved the zoning bylaw and a site plan application to redevelop that site. And at the time of the approval of the overall site, all the technical submission of requirements for the entire site was approved, including this particular building at the corner, southeast corner of Leslie and Mount Albert. Now, at the time, the tenant was not yet has been established. So this memo to council to inform council that they're finishing their last phase of development here. They finally got their last tenant in place. It's going to be a daycare. And we reviewed the technical nature of this matter through the overall site plan. And we just want to inform council that there will be construction through the delegated approval authority. We will be approving a site plan to finish off the last phase here. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we know how many childcare spots will be provided? It's not a very large building, so I'm just wondering how many kids it will accommodate. Do we know?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the building permits has been applied for, and the architect's OBC matrix does indicate occupancy loads. So although it does not indicate the number of child, it says that how much this building can actually hold. And the building can hold about 90 people, which include staff and students. But of course, the number of students will be regulated through the province's requirements of a ratio of students and staff requirements. So those will be, the number of students will be regulated as well, not only from an occupancy perspective, but as well as the provincial level of what's deemed to be adequate.
Thank you. One further question, if I may, Madam Mayor. When the there's a restaurant in that plaza. When their patio was constructed during COVID, the landlord removed the bike racks that were in that location. And I think I see, it's a bit small on the PDF, but is there a location that they're relocating those bike racks to? I think there's a covered structure closer to this building. Is that the case?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is the case. There are proposed bike racks under a pergola along Leslie there, just south of the proposed building E. So.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, I have had some community feedback from residents who were concerned about traffic circulation leaving the northern driveway and exiting onto Far. I guess there's they're looking left but not right, and they're turning into oncoming traffic that's on Far at the moment. My comment to that resident was that that's exiting from private property onto public roadway, and he'll have to follow the rules of the road. But I didn't know if there was anything that we could do or that the landlord could do to make that little spot safer for the users of the plaza and the neighbors nearby.
Okay, and I guess with your permission, Madam Mayor, I would like to defer this question to Mr. Molinari at CIS.
This is the one you've been carrying all the time?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Mr. Molinari, go ahead, please.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, we can work with YRP on this, and we can also maybe look at some signage potentially to maybe put on the plaza on the way out. So maybe if we could get the actual complaint, or maybe discuss with the resident or with Councillor Roy DiClemente, I'll get a few more details. We'll see if we can put an action plan together.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, staff.
Thank you. I would imagine they'll be fairly busy. I would think it may be quite popular. The one on the south end of town is still in the planning stages, but really there isn't a large one in Sharon as we've grown. So I just have a motion for the update on the Vince's Plaza. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persuccini, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 6 in development services is part lot control exemption bylaw Oxford Subdivision. Have staff for that one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The memo this evening here for part lot control in the Oxford Subdivision is to produce 6 units of semi-detached homes in the approved plan of subdivision in Mount Albert. And that's here to answer any questions here.
Thank you. Questions? I'm not seeing any at this time. I'm sure as it moves along, we'll have other reports and other questions as well. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Persuccini, all those in favor? And that's carried. And do we have anything else under development services at this time?
No, that's about it, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're at item L, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services. Mr. Molinari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight. The first report is a joint report between CIS and CPRC with regards to the Mount Albert storm outfalls, retaining wall and trails. And actually, Madam Mayor, we've had some recent discussions, actually very recent ones, with regards to this report. And what we'd like to do is adjust the recommendations so that we can hold a PIC with the area residents on some of the impacts of that trail network, and then bring this report back with some of that feedback so that council can make a fulsome decision. So essentially what we'd be looking to do is replace recommendation 2 and 3 with the recommendation that we've laid with the clerk. So, Madam Clerk, if you could put the proposed recommendation up, and maybe we can go from there.
Can everyone see it? Council directs staff to host a public information center to receive feedback on the trail options and report to council with the results of a preferred solution. Mr. Molinari, just before I call the vote on that, I have had some conversations with residents in the area, and it's not regarding the trail, but it's regarding their backyards that are actually back up to this area that we're speaking about. And I understand it's almost like the Scarborough Bluffs in that every year they lose a little bit of their backyard that moves along. So I'm wondering, I realize that we're talking about having a public information center about the trail. Does this also fit for the residents? And I guess that's Alice Street. Does that deal with that as well, or is that something separate and apart? I'd hate to see people come out to a meeting and not have it's not geared for their concerns. However, I think there are concerns that we need to deal with, and I'm not sure when it's now or later.
Through you, Madam Mayor, actually the retaining wall that's being used to support those the slope and also provide for the trail is failing slowly. So we've had a geotechnical consultant go out and ensure that the slope is stable, and it is generally stable the way it is for the short term. Obviously not 10 years. You know, we really need to deal with this in the next couple of years, but it doesn't need to be dealt with this year or even next. We still have a little bit of time for that. But the bottom line is that we either need to repair that retaining wall and which would allow us to maintain the trail, or what we could do is remove part of the retaining wall and fill it in with dirt so that we have a continuous slope that will prevent that slope from further eroding. So there's a couple of different ways that we can move forward, but the trail discussion and the slope stability discussion are all intertwined. So as we have that PIC, we can explain the work that we've done to date, and we can explain what the options are with respect to that retaining wall and how to treat that in the future.
Thank you. I just wouldn't want the folks that are there as trail users be subject to some people whose lots are disappearing and lose focus on what we're really doing with that. So I don't know. I don't know how many there are on Alice. I think there's 5 or 6. Maybe not that many that have issues, but I don't know whether we include them in that meeting when talking about the trail, or have a separate meeting with them because their issues are very different at the end of the day. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll reach out to those residents directly, and we'll have a PIC so that everybody has been incorporated.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm happy to have that process go forward. One thing I would like to request is whether we could have a look at whether there's an alternative trail route that we could more appropriately maintain that would create that loop in the park. So if we remove this, and I realize it's just a footpath, but if we remove it, we're removing a trail section that's removing a loop, and people like to walk in loops. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to find an alternate route that makes that loop. So if we could include that in some of our thinking, I would appreciate that. If it's not possible, I understand, but I think it would help make some of the decisions a little bit clearer for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is opportunity for that trail to go on street, but it's not the same as being on a trail. But there is a way of getting there. But we will have a second look at that and see if there is an alternate route that can be taken.
Thank you. Councillor Crohn, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to staff. I certainly support what Councillor Roy DeClemente just said. I think if you take something away, it's nice to give something back. I've certainly had some conversations with Mr. Karmazin about the possibility of even a dog park in Vivian Creek Park. We certainly have the space there to accommodate. That could be a discussion for another day, but I certainly welcome this process. I think it's important that we make sure that the folks that live at the north end of Vallis Street, Royal Oak Road, and Valley Mills are contacted about this, and that they know that we're going to have this meeting. I think it's excellent to get input from the community about this. There are some drainage issues on Alice Street as well that I think we need to address. So it's nice. I know I've been, for the last few years, I've been harping on this with you, Mr. Molinari, so I appreciate your attentiveness to it and patience with me. But I'm glad to see that we're moving on with it. If we can see that an alignment of what the path forward is, I think that would be welcomed by everyone. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Crohn, will you move this? And do I have a seconder? Councillor Roy DeClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Second item we have is assumption of Sharonvit Estates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an assumption report of Sharonvit, phase 1. It's 158 lot development on the east side of Morel with access from Manorhampton. The maintenance period is expired and all works have been inspected and found to be in accordance with the standards, with the exception of a few boulevard trees. We also note that there's a woodlot and 2 vacant development blocks awaiting servicing allocation, which will be deferred to a future phase. And further, the placement of top asphalt on William Kane Court and Sharon Creek Drive would be deferred to phase 2 simply because there's still some vacant lots that need to be developed, and we prefer to have those to top out the streets once those adjacent lots have been fully constructed, so that we don't damage the permanent pavement for years to come. With that, Madam Mayor, we're holding securities to cover up those deficiencies, and we recommend proceeding with assumption at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wondering about the, I think it's the block, the parquet access. I believe it's block 177, or it's the 176. I'm not sure. These houses have been built for 3 years, and I believe even last summer there was garbage accumulating there. There was a hole in the ground. It really was an eyesore. Is there something that we can do to make that, to get that complete, so that it looks like an actual neighborhood and not just a vacant lot that's collecting garbage and weeds?
Through Madam Mayor, the idea is hopefully with the Sharon Inline solution, there will be some allocation provided, and they'll be able to move forward with development to finish off the remaining lots in the Sharon community. So that's our preferred approach. And secondly, there's always asking the developer to go in and keep those areas clean and being vigilant to stay on top of that. So those would be the two recommendations.
there's two, perhaps I wasn't clear with my question. I apologize. There's two issues. One is there are lands that are going to have houses on them that don't have servicing. Those are not being very well maintained. They're an eyesore, and many of them are right on the entrance to that community. So the minute you're coming home, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a model home that doesn't have the lawn mowed, and you've got garbage and weeds on the vacant lots. That's one issue that hopefully will get addressed through the inline solution, and we can address that through our bylaw staff to deal with property standards. The other issue is the parquet and the access to the woodlot that is remaining unfinished and incomplete. And it's been over 3 years that we've been waiting for this to be done. When is that going to happen?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd actually have to check into that. I don't have an answer for you on that one today. Perhaps General Manager Karmazin can answer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, both the woodlot and the parquet block are both designed, and they will be constructed this summer for completion, substantial completion later on this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Roy DeClemente, would you move that motion or not?
My instinct is to wait until they actually do what they're supposed to do. But I'd prefer to hear from my other colleagues on this.
Do we have a mover and a seconder on this motion? Please. Councillor Persicidi, and seconding would be Councillor Crone. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. Item number 3 is Community Infrastructure Environmental Services Assumption of Wing and Foot Development Phase 1. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is another standard assumption report. It's 157 unit development on the south side of Doan Road between Yonge Street and 2nd Concession and Holland Landing. The required maintenance period is expired and all works have been inspected and found to be in accordance with standards, with the exception of a couple of items, including the monitoring of the effectiveness of some drainage improvements impacting some rear lots on Prunella. Those improvements have been made. Some pumps have been installed and seem to be working, but we just want to keep an eye on that for a little bit longer to make sure that it's functioning as we expect it to. There's a small number of boulevard trees that require replacement in the spring that we would be holding securities for. And there's a walkway block and 2 buffer strips that are being deferred to phase 2 due to ongoing construction and their adjacency to the phase 2 works. And again, security is being held for these items, and we recommend proceeding with assumption at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, Mr. Molinari? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just with respect to the drainage problem, Mr. Molinari, is that on the east or west portion of Prunella?
That is.
I'm presuming west.
I believe so. No, it's on the east side. It's on the east side.
So the west Prunella, but on the east side of West Prunella, it goes in and comes back out. I'm just trying to get which end. There's one that's pretty much the west side is pretty much finished. The east side is still under construction. I think some people are just moving into those residents.
Yes.
I'm just really concerned that those drainage problems get fixed up and it's not something that we get thrown back at us at a later date. It kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah, there were some issues with some of the roof leaders being directed to that area, and by doing some of that work with the developer, putting the sump pumps in, we were able to we believe that the issue has been resolved. But like I said, we just want to maintain and keep an eye on that for a little bit longer, just to make sure that, you know, it can make it through the spring season, etc. And if it does well this year, then I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. I have a friend that just moved in up there. I just don't want to hear it. That's all.
Will you move that, Councillor? Thank you. Were there other questions? Sorry. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Just very briefly, those backyards in Prunella, I don't believe they have their fences up. Have we issued grading certificates to those properties, or are we still waiting?
That's a good question. I'm not certain.
I know I've shown a couple of houses on Prunella, and the backyards did seem kind of wet, so I don't remember there being any fences up, but it would seem to me that we would want to make sure that there weren't any fences installed until we were sure that the grading was going to work and that the drainage was effective.
Yeah, all the lot grading has been certified.
Okay. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Roy DiClemente. All's in favor? And that's carried. Item number 4 is Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Report regarding the 2021 Water Summary Report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is our standard annual report that the MECP requires that staff provide to Council by the end of March every year. It provides a status of the town's drinking water systems and its overall performance. We're pleased to advise again this year that the town received 100% compliance with the MECP based on their inspections in 2021. The town's drinking water continues to be maintained at a high standard for residents. And also the town continues to transition to the new American Waterworks Association metrics for non-revenue water. And the initial data suggests that the town compares very favorably to other municipalities across North America. In fact, we're just shy of being in the top 25th percentile for the loss cost rate KPI. And that is just one of the KPIs, but as we continue on and get more data and build this information, we'll be able to report a little more fulsomely in the future. We do note that we have maintained our old non-revenue water percentage just as a measure while we develop the new KPIs, and we can see that there has been a general trend in the downward direction of that non-revenue water, which is also a positive sign, and that has been trending downwards for many years now. So that's essentially the report, Madam Mayor. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Questions? I'm not seeing any questions. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, you had a question. Go ahead.
Not a question as much as a comment. It just occurred to me, Madam Mayor, I believe you know who I'm speaking about when I talk about this, but I've had it mentioned to me about the relatively high prices of companies being able to buy water from East Gwillimbury. And that they can get a much better deal in surrounding municipalities. I'm not sure that is York Region municipalities, but surrounding municipalities nonetheless. Just the other day, Mr. Molinari, I came around Bales and we had a truck there flushing and all that water's running down the ditch. And I can't help but think that we need to come up with a better plan and somehow incorporate the sale of water in the flushing somehow. I mean, we're dumping it down the ditch and we're telling companies that we can't sell it to them at a reduced rate. It just seems to me that there needs to be a better plan there. I'm not sure what that plan is, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we do have a bulk fill station at the end of Bales that we constructed a couple of years back. And we are selling that water for less than what residents would consume it, and in order to drive some business to that area. we're actually have an analysis that's underway with the region in partnership to look at that area, because Bales Drive is an area that we have most of our flushing in, and we want to stop flushing in that area if we can. So there's a number of options in terms of looking at water quality in that area that we're looking at with the region, and we hope to find a solution that or implement the most effective and efficient solution that we can for that area. So that study's underway. We're hoping to get some results on that shortly and implement that as soon as possible.
If I may, Madam Mayor, maybe I will reach out to the person I'm speaking about and have them check in again to make sure that I mean, maybe things have changed. I haven't spoke to him about this for a little while, but it is, you know, when you see the water running down the ditch, it makes me think we might as well be selling it to him at a cut rate and let him use it.
And he's been on that for quite some time. He's a volume user of the water and sees it on a regular basis and continues to make phone calls. And it does somewhat seem silly that it's going down the road and they're paying for it at the other end. So thank you. We can have a look at that and see. Thank you. Could I have a mover to seconder for that, please? Councillor Persichini and Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. Number 5, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services, Rainbow Crosswalk installation.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Further to the report from the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, staff proposed to install a rainbow crosswalk at the Civic Center in preparation for Pride Month in June. So the proposed location connects the Civic Center to Temperance Hall. This location has the benefit of not being within the region's right-of-way, and thus approval from the region is not required. And since we're trying to expedite this and get it in place very quickly, we don't necessarily see that as a problem, but it's one more step in the process. We also note that when we first looked at this, we had originally thought about putting it in where the existing crosswalk is, but there already is an expensive street print treatment at that location that we would have to take out and replace with this treatment. So, and finally, there's actually less traffic at this proposed location, and there's less turning traffic on it, which will help with the longevity of it. So, for a number of reasons, we felt that the preferred location for this initial treatment was in the location that connects the Civic Center over to Temperance Hall. And what we'd like to do is use this, because we haven't done this before, use this location as a test location, as a pilot, and see how it performs, and make sure we get the stenciling correct, the size right, the way it looks, how everybody wants that, and then we can mimic that with a more permanent solution in the future, and replicate that at some other locations in the town as well as part of future budgets. But that was our suggestion, but we're happy to hear any feedback or direction that council may have. And council, just happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? I'm not seeing any questions. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persichini, Councillor Crohn, all those in favor? And that's carried. Mr. Molinari, is there anything else under Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services we should be aware of?
Nothing further at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Molinari? I'm not seeing any. We are at item M, Community Parks, Recreation and Culture. There is one report. Mr. Carmison?
My apologies. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. We have one prepared item and one verbal update for council. The first prepared item is a memo, which is an update on our active transportation and trails master plan, as well as a trail safety update, providing an example of an updated trail safety sign And in addition, the introduction of an EG Trail Ambassador program that we would expect to commence this spring. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Questions? Do you have a question, Councillor Persicini?
Just a comment. I just wanted to thank Aaron and his staff to finally get this going. I really appreciate it because it's going to be used and safety is important. And you know, it took about 1.5 years, but we got it done. So thank you very, very much to you and your staff. Great job.
Great, thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. Also support the initiative. I like the idea of the trail ambassadors. I think we've got a few of them out there anyway, but they're just not official. I did want to suggest that we also include messaging about keeping your dog on a leash, and that seems to be my #1 issue when I'm using the trails, is that there are off-leash dogs, and we like to remind people that they have to have them on a leash, especially when there's coyotes in the area, and that's the other angle. But if there's no room on the sign, then maybe the nighttime stuff could be removed, and you could put the dog leash one on, or it could be added. But that, I think, is one of the big conflicts, aside from people not ringing their bells, like Councillor Persicini has experienced, I think, is the dogs that are off their leash. Thank you.
I fully agree on that one.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Could I moved by Councillor Persicini, seconded by Councillor Roy DeClemente. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any other items under Community Parks, Recreation and Culture that we should be dealing with tonight, members of council? I'm not seeing any. Mr. Karmazin, did you have anything?
Yeah.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I do have a brief verbal update. Our Parks Development staff have been informed that the development in My Queensville Community Phase 5 intends to commence with some of the tree removals on their property this week. These removals are required for their earthworks, and they're trying to stay outside of the migratory bird season, which commences in April. All the removals would be consistent with the conditions of the earthworks agreement and all the requirements of the town. I should also note that the developer has provided communication to all the adjacent property owners, as well as conducted individual consultation with those property owners related to any tree removals. And this includes the properties at Grant Court, as well as Leslie Street. And I'd also like to further highlight that following all the removals that will occur on the lands, there will only be removals of trees on the adjacent properties, there will only be trees on the development properties, not the adjacent properties or trees on the property lines of the adjacent properties. So in addition, fencing will also be put up for tree protection with the earthworks occurring to protect any of the trees that are on the private property and off the development lands. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have related to the removal activity.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Karmazin? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. We'll move along to legal and council support services.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe Deputy CAO Valchich was supposed to provide some introductory remark with respect to this area of the report.
Thank you,
yes.
Madam Clerk, Madam Mayor, through you. This report that the clerk has put together for you tonight basically is consistent with standard practice really across the province as it relates to what's referred to as lame duck status of council, which really has the potential to kick in after, I believe it's August 18th or so after. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
through you, Madam Mayor, there are two time periods, starting with nomination day, which is August 19 to voting day, and then subsequent to that from voting day to the beginning of the new term, which would be November 15th.
So, Madam Mayor, this report is really here as information and gives you an option, if you wish, to delegate authority to the administration in the event that we might find ourselves in that situation, and really just protects the town so that in the unlikely event that we have to make, procurements above a certain amount or make decisions, certain decisions that are outlined in the report, that in fact we have the ability to do so, because without that delegated authority, we would be prohibited in some circumstances from making those decisions. So it's really here for your information and consideration should you wish to consider that and delegate that authority to staff.
Mr. Velchik, is there a certain point where it has to be designated, or is it now or not?
It is prior to August 18th, okay, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Webster.
We've never had this situation, Madam Mayor, and I was questioning this report, but what I would think we would do is, if we know we're going to be in this situation, which we hopefully won't, I think we could call a special council meeting just to get absolute direction at that time. But I think this is just a forewarning.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persuccini, Councillor Roy DiClemente, all those in favor? That's carried. We're at item O, and that's administration. There are no reports at this time. Are there any updates from administration that should be dealt with today?
Unfortunately, Madam Mayor, there are, and I will be quick and tactful in this. Firstly, the agenda, we should have had this item before the last agenda item. We're pleased to announce with Solicitor Horner moving on to the Toronto Housing Corporation that we've been very fortunate to have Don St. Clair, who served us for many years as legal counsel, to rejoin us. So Don, welcome back. And Don will be providing legal advice to council and to our business operations. To simplify the return of Don, on an interim basis, we're going to have our clerks area report through Deputy CAO Valchich, and that's why he introduced tonight's matter. With regard to bylaw enforcement, we're looking at, on an interim basis, moving it to report through our building branch in André-Saunier. So please stay tuned, more to follow. We have active recruitments going on for many key positions. So that's the first update. Second update, Madam Mayor, is I think there was a news article that might have been circulated lately, and was regarding the York Region Sewage Act panel that's been appointed by the province. And we did, in fact, after the agenda deadline closed last week, meet with them. They had sent a letter through the mayor's office and requesting specific information on our perspective of the Upper York delay, which includes the lagoons and slowed growth and many other aspects. And we met with the panel. The Madam Mayor did join us for approximately 2 hours, and it was a really fulsome discussion. And since we couldn't make it to this agenda with the description, we plan on bringing a full memo with the topics of discussion. And the good news is they seem very engaged, they're listening, and they want to hear from the stakeholders, and they've asked to meet with us again. So we will bring an update to council April 5th in the form of a memo for public disclosure. And that's the updates for tonight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I will move along to item P, and that's Emergency and Community Safety Services. And Chief, I think you have an announcement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I do. Last week, we received in the mail a letter from Sick Kids Foundation indicating that we had there was a donation made on our behalf by the Creaser family, and the Madam Clerk has put it up on the screen there. So the family has donated $10,000 in our name to the Sick Kids Foundation. Now, this is as a result of earlier last month, there was a fire up in Georgina, up on Lake Drive, and we responded to assist Georgina Fire Services under the mutual aid program. So out of something terrible, a positive, good news story has occurred. Happy to take any questions.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I often wonder when I hear about fires in Georgina. I am contacted by the mayor sometimes to thank us for the service that we provide to them, and I send off thanks to them sometimes when there are times that we need them. So it's a good working relationship, and for our family to contribute to that extent is almost overwhelming. Wonderful.
Agreed.
Thank you. Would you please pass along our thanks to all of your members that were there, and how proud we are of what they've done, and obviously it made a difference in this family.
Will do, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions of the chief? I'm not seeing any. We will move along to Q, which is council committees, board, and groups. East Gwillimbury Public Library. Do we have someone from the library on tonight? We do. Hello there.
Hello.
And so we have a receipt of $40,000 donation. Would you like to take that one away for me, Monica, and explain?
Absolutely.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received a $40,000 donation from the Good Shepherd Child Care Center, $20,000 towards the food pantry and $20,000 towards services for family and children. The child care operated under a parent board since 1994 and recently dissolved. And their board determined nonprofits in the community to donate their reserve funding to, and we were one of the selectees. The chief financial officer of the board attended the library board meeting in February, where we formally thanked them for this incredibly generous donation. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions for Monica? Nice surprise. Very nice. That's wonderful. We can do a lot of things with that would probably have to wait for a little while. So that's
absolutely
just amazing. Wonderful. I'm not seeing any questions. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Cronin, Councillor Roy DeClemente. All those in favor? That's carried. And is there anything else that you have for us tonight, Monica?
Yes, I do have a second memo. This is regarding our phase 2 of the Mount Albert branch renovation. It is now completed. The last step was installing the study rooms at the Mount Albert Library. We had surveyed the community to determine where they would like to see the rooms and how large they would like them. And our community said they wanted 2 small rooms, and they are now installed. We want to thank Council for supporting this initiative, and if you have not yet stopped by to see the enhancement, please do so. The transformation is truly remarkable. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and seconder for the Councillor Roy DeClemente and Councillor Foster? All those in favor? And that's carried. The next one is M. Potter.
Through you, Madam Mayor, items Q3 and Q4 have been dealt with following our deputation item E1.
Thank you. It seems such a long time ago that we dealt with it. We're at item R, correspondence for consideration, and the first one that we have is correspondence from Bay Julian, Member of Parliament, New Westminster, Burnaby, regarding private members bill. Do we have a staff member that might be? I'm not seeing that. Mr. Webster, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I think in instances like this, it might be best just to refer it to staff, and we'll work with the various stakeholder groups, advisory committees, and report back to council.
Our motion, the last line is correspondence be referred to staff and the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Are you suggesting that we'll send it to staff and then they can work with the Diversity Committee at that point?
I think that would simplify the process, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So I'll remove the last 3 lines. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DeClemente, Councillor Crohn, all those in favor? That's carried. We have no reports at this time. We have no resolutions at this time. We have 4 bylaws. Madam Clerk, I can do them all as one. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Persicini, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. Other business, April 12th, 2022, 6 p.m. Council workshop topic, growth management. And confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-028 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on March 22, 2022 be taken as read and acted, signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? That's carried. And we have an adjournment at 8:33. That might be a record. It might be a record. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DeClemente, Councillor Persicini, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you, staff. I think that might be a record.
Have a great night.
Thank you
Good
for
night,
your
everybody.
cooperation. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.